welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 90 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 16 of A Clash of Kings, that's Bran 2.
And we're going to chat about the chapter, we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully, we're going to provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll be particularly helpful if you're not reading along. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
All right, good.
You got any good stories? I actually have a very quick one, actually.
Yes, let's hear it.
You know, a tree fell on my car.
Yes, we all know it. The whole GOH family knows it.
The repair was great. They did a good job of it, and everything looked fine. And then my tall neighbour, who I play tennis with, came round, and he said that they've missed a bit. And he can see the roof, which I can't really see. I mean, it's not like my car's that tall, but he's noticeably taller than me, so he has a different angle. And you know, where the sides of your car come up and meet the roof, there's kind of like two channels there.
Uh-huh.
Those are normally filled with rubber bits, and those rubber bits were missing.
Oh.
And I had no idea. I'd never noticed. I mean, I could see it just by peering up there, but it just wasn't sort of natural in my line of vision. But he spotted it straight away, and I called them up, and they said, "You know, we were just discussing what those two things were."
It's like when you finish building an IKEA dresser or something, and you've got some screws left. Oh, that's good stuff.
So I drove down and they fit them in like 2 minutes flat, and everything was great. But,
all right.
It was funny. I would have gone forever not noticing.
And they would have eventually thrown those parts out, thinking,
probably
just taking up space now.
Yeah.
So I was contacted by a listener's mom this week. And we're in trouble.
Yeah.
It's all that use of the word bastard. She said, "Why do you gotta cuss so much?"
That's true. Yeah.
No, nothing like that. She contacted me because she wanted to know about the books that we wrote that go along with the podcast that we talk about, because her son wanted them for his birthday.
Well, that's awesome.
Unfortunately, I had to fess up that we did not actually write A Song of Ice and Fire. But yes, that gave me a good chuckle. Actually, in full disclosure, I actually know the listener and the mom. The listener is Ethan's best friend, and we've known him and his mom and his whole family basically for the past 2 decades. So that's why she texted me separately, not on the GOH email. But I was. Well,
there's our next podcast. Then we write a book and then we talk about our own book.
Yes, yeah. I was like, man, I wish I had written A Song of Ice and Fire. I wouldn't be doing a podcast about it. That's for sure. So.
Nor would I be writing the sequels.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, well, happy birthday, Noah. It's his 21st birthday, so.
Congratulations, Noah. Okay, let's get down to business. How did we leave Bran Stark? It's been a while. Last time we saw Bran, he was discussing the Comet with Maester Luwin. He was games mastering a game in the Godswood that ended with Walder Frey being bitten by Shaggy Dog. Pretty much all games in the Gods would end that way,
right.
I would imagine, now that that's where Shaggy Dog hangs out. And he was continuing to have strange and portentous dreams. So, Mackelly, why don't we give him the summary of this one?
Okay. Well, Winterfell is abuzz as vassal lords, or their representatives, are arriving from all over the north to celebrate the Harvest Festival. All those who come have things they need to discuss with the Starks. So Bran, being the Stark in Winterfell, must sit in on the meetings where he barely understands what's being said. He'd much rather be in the practice yard, tilting at the quintains with the Walders in Lord Wyman Manderly's retinue.
Hodor arrives at Bran's room, jolly as ever. Bran dresses and uses the bars attached to the walls to swing into position to drop into the wicker basket on Hodor's back. They take a detour to the practice yard, where most of Manderly's men stare at the sight. Bran tries to ignore them. The Walders come over and tease Hodor, calling him an ugly horse. Bran gets angry and threatens to stick summer on them, but the Freys are armoured and not afraid. Before it goes any further, Maester Luwin arrives and chastises all involved, except Hodor.
Right. Hodor's the innocent party here. Luwin tells Bran that he was right to defend Hodor, but that he shouldn't have been there in the first place. His place was with Lord Manderly. But the Lord proves forgiving and pleasant company. He suggests that White Harbor is a good place for the new royal mint that the North will need now that it's independent. Furthermore, he's ready to build the navy that Robb will no doubt need as well. Bran likes this idea, but his opinion is not sought, and Rodrik is non-committal. But he does agree to raise the idea with Robb.
The after-lunch conversation turns to the recently widowed Lady Donella Hornwood. Oh, I'm wearing my Hornwood socks in honour of this.
All right. Yes, good timing.
I'll flash them to you later. Lord Wyman needs a wife. He's been a widower for 8 years and fancies the Hornwood's lands. If she's not interested in him, his son Wendell is single and will need a bride when he returns from the south. His other son Willis is captive of the Lannisters, and a raven has arrived offering him back if Manderly withdraws his troops. The Lord has no intention of acceding to this demand, but hopes that his son will be remembered when there's a prisoner exchange.
The next day, Bran and company meet with the aforementioned Donella Hornwood. She's troubled by Roose Bolton's bastard son, who's amassing troops at the Dreadfort. Hopefully this is to add to the war effort in the south, but he, rather sexistly, won't give her an answer when pressed on his intentions. They discuss said bastard. He's not been formally recognized, but Bolton's son and heir died a few years ago, and so Roose brought this child into his home to raise as his heir. Rumors are that he's a nasty piece of work, even for a Bolton, in Lady Hornwood's words.
She's beyond childbearing, but she has suitors aplenty, but she's still grieving and will only wed if commanded to do so. But she does indicate that Ser Rodrik should throw his own hat into the ring.
Ooh la la.
Maester Luwin is amused. Bran likes the idea, but Rodrik points out that he's older, and when he dies, Lady Hornwood would be back in the same mess, and Rodrik's own daughter, Beth, would be in peril too, as the nominal heir to the Homewood lands at that point.
So Bran heads to the Godswood. Summer races over, but Shaggy Dog disappears into some underbrush. Osha startles Bran and Hodor by suddenly emerging from a pool of water. Her body is covered in scars, and she is neither cold nor embarrassed. She's heard about the Freys bullying and warns Bran about them, particularly Little Walder, who she sees as mean through and through. Bran then denies having more wolf dreams, but Osha mocks his poor lying skills.
Later, more lords arrive, this time a contingent from the Umbers, the Great John's uncles, Mors and Hotha, put in their case for Lady Hornwood's hand. They too want ships, and are told to work with Lord Manderly to build some longships to protect from sea raids by wildlings. You can't go over the wall, you can sail around it, It doesn't go on forever. Next, the Glovers and the Tallharts arrive. Nobody is putting enough grain aside for the winter, and all are commanded to increase that.
Leopold Tallhart has an unusual take on the Hornwood lands. His own younger son is nephew to Danella. He could be sent there as a surrogate heir, and even take the name Hornwood. How generous. He's 10, and will be a comfort and company to Lady Hornwood. Luwin confides to Bran that Lady Hornwood's future may actually just come down to practicalities. Robb might need to build an alliance with the Riverland House, and he gives the Freys as an example, and Bran offers either or both of the Walders in Winterfell.
Mm-hmm. Last to arrive in Winterfell is 14-year-old Clay Cerwyn, who has always been a friend to Bran, whose father is a captive of the Lannisters. He asks if he should call Bran Prince now, but Bran laughs it off. Cerwyn's men joke about Stannis' claim, and news that Joffrey might have the Kingslayer for a father. Bran becomes dizzy and has trouble breathing. That night, he dreams the raven is pecking out his eyes and creating a third eye in Bran's forehead. Through this new eye, he sees himself hanging from a tower and a golden man saying, "The things I do for love," and tossing Bran out.
Oh, that almost sounds familiar.
Yes, to us it is.
Right.
The only person who doesn't remember this is Bran.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apologies if that's the longest chapter summary we've ever done, but it was hard to summarise this chapter because it was just a catalogue of interaction.
Yeah.
And
who
knows which ones are going to be the most important?
Right.
Clearly,
right.
I don't remember.
I found this to be, of the now 90 chapters that we've covered, the most challenging to create a show around. There's so many little pieces and bits and bobs, and it was really hard to try and encapsulate it all into a coherent show.
Well, yeah, we'll get there. Check back in half an hour, see how we're doing.
If everyone's asleep, we know we've failed.
I did enjoy it though, because I like the sort of like the build up of the whole tapestry of Westeros and the North, because sure we've got the leaders of all these houses basically working with Robb down in the Riverlands, but now this is the sort of lesser brothers, uncles, nephews, whatever, of these houses, and sort of like how they're dealing with their situation while their lord is out of town. Clearly, Roose Bolton's heir is up to no good.
Seems like it.
Yeah. And obviously some of them, like Lord Manderly, of course, hasn't gone himself because he's too fat and old to fight, but he's clearly paying a lot of attention to what's going down there. But also perhaps using that opportunity to sort of like gain an advantage over other Northern lords. He's a lord. Everybody else is just speaking on behalf of their lord, kind of thing.
Right.
So he might get some concessions out of the Starks, like the Royal Mint, like money for a new navy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which, if everybody was there pitching, he might not get it because everybody's got an equal claim.
Right.
So
yes,
I found the whole thing really good. In fact, I think it might be my favourite Bran chapter.
Oh yes, I could see that.
There was the early drama of Bran.
Sure. But... Yeah. It's definitely. As far as the recent Bran chapters go, it's the one that has the most interesting things going on.
Yeah. Mostly because he's just an observer, really.
Right.
I feel bad criticizing Bran. He's an 8-year-old child, but his life isn't that thrilling.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, it's definitely cool to see the daily life going on, Even the meetings, they're interesting, and how they entertain themselves. It's pretty cool because there's still important matters being discussed, and it was just there was a whole bunch of conversations that were very similar to one another.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned in the notes here. I kept thinking, I'm surprised the editor didn't say, "Hey, you've got to cut this back," because this is kind of like the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
it's Luwin, Rodrik, and Bran sitting in a room talking to one representative after another, and pretty much all about the same subject, Lady Hornwood and her lush lands.
Lady Hornwood and not putting enough food aside.
Right, there is the not putting enough food aside.
Yeah, like you were saying earlier, we don't know what ones are going to be important storylines and what ones are just, filler conversation. But some of the things seem like they might not be very necessary, like the Glovers only putting 1/10 of their food aside because Hedge Wizard told them that there's going to be a second Spirit Summer. But, maybe in the future, maybe it's setting us up for in the future that if we ever make it to winter, that the Glovers are starving because they weren't putting enough food aside.
Or maybe even before winter, something comes up where it really relies on the Glovers to not be idiots, and they fail that one too. Because
yes. It's just showing that they don't think it through very well.
How hard is this? Yeah.
Maybe the whole Hornwood Derby situation is supposed to show to us that without a strong enough lord in Winterfell, that some of these lesser lords are trying to take advantage of the situation to their benefit. Because they're all throwing their hat in the ring, and it's not because of how amazing Donella Hornwood is. It's because there's free land sitting out there.
I have a question which I think you'll probably have to edit out, but let me pose it anyway. Back in the dream of the Maesters, the ones in charge, was it Lady Hornwood's wedding?
No, it was not Lady Hornwood's wedding.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Because it feels like she's going to get married at some point here, but I don't remember any of this,
Right. No, it was not. It was not Lady Hornwood's wedding. But that's a good guess. I could definitely see why you would have guessed that.
Yeah. All right. So, one thing I noticed is how hurt Bran was by the stares of Manderly's men as he's carried around in the wicker basket on Hodor's back. And I get it. I mean, you're self-conscious about things, and and man, you're crippled and you're being carried around. But Maester Luwin, I think, could reassure him a little bit here. If I was a Manderly and a 7-foot guy walked past without a wicker basket and a child, I would stare.
Yes.
This man's 7 foot tall.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could definitely make that argument, that's not something you see every day. A 7-foot tall man walking past. Speaking of Hodor's size, Bran is thinking about how he doesn't want to be. He never wanted to be a lord. He wanted to be a knight, and how he's never going to be a knight now. And he says to Hodor, based on his massive size and incredible strength, you could have been a great knight if the gods hadn't taken your wits. And I thought, could you imagine Hodor with all his wits about him in a melee at a tourney? He would be like the mountain. Like, he's like mountain type size.
Would be like the mountain. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Frightening thought.
Yeah. Well, I also noticed that Bran and the Walder boys, the Freys, they don't seem to be bonding very well.
No.
And it reminded me...
Water.
Yes, right. It reminded me of back in Cat 2, which is one of the very early chapters, obviously, of Game of Thrones, when Cat was subtly nudging Ned to go south with Robert, and Ned wanted to bring Bran to King's Landing with him, and his reasoning was that he felt that Bran could bring Robb and Joffrey together because, as he described him, quick to laugh and easy to love. And if he's not able to get along with these Walders, he was never going to succeed with Joffrey Baratheon. So,
true, but I will say there's a slight difference between those two things, because one is getting along with the Walders, the Freys, and the other one is getting two other people to get along with one another, and he might be better at that.
Sure. Yeah.
He's not going to like everybody. Nobody likes everybody, but maybe you can be the kind of person who can make two people who wouldn't like each other begin to like each other.
Sure. Break down barriers between others.
Usually the best way to do that is to be their common enemy.
Yes, right. He could be their target.
There's nothing more of a bonding experience than having somebody else to pick up.
Yes. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They could...
Right.
Yeah, I was also thinking that, back then, Bran had use of his legs. He had his family around. He might been less insecure, easier to get along with, because he could do more things with the boys. He could be part of the group, He could have been the one that took them down into the crypts, and he could play the games like the crossing game and all that stuff.
Whereas being forced to just watch them play that game just sort of like further entrenches his sort of isolation.
Yes.
And, it's going to hard to keep your sunny disposition in those situations.
Right. But so after there's a dust up between the Walders and Bran involving Hodor, and then Luwin comes in and he reprimands all of them, and he takes Bran away because he tells him he's not supposed to be in the yard in the first place. He's supposed to be with Rodrik and Wyman Mandela, and he says, "Must I fetch you like a child?" And then in the very next breath, Bran says, "So what are we going to talk about?" And he says, "You will talk of nothing. You are only a child." It's the usual way that adults talk to kids in paradoxical terms there.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Plus, the other thing is, if he really wanted him there, he shouldn't have just sent Hodor to get him. It should have been like, if you want an 8-year-old to be in a certain place at a certain time, you better take them there yourself. Don't rely on them to find their way there. True.
That makes me think there might be a trend going on here in Winterfell, because they also trusted a 3-year-old to properly raise and train a direwolf.
A direwolf.
They might slightly overestimate the capabilities of children around Winterfell.
Yeah. I will say, actually, on the chastisement, he chastises the Freys there and then in the yard, but he actually saves his chastisement for Bran for when they are together walking to the meeting with Lord Manderly, because Bran didn't do that much wrong, apart from not being where he should be.
Right. Yes. I think I think we mentioned in the summary that Luwin does say you were right to defend him, but you should never have been there to begin with. So yeah.
So Wyman Mandela comes across really well. I think he's jovial and smart and mentally nimble, not physically nimble apparently, but
he definitely seems loyal.
That's right. He's not there fighting, but he literally couldn't. So he might as well stay home.
Right.
But I mean, his loyalty is shown in his reaction to the raven from the Lannisters.
Oh yes, I agree.
Offering his son back if he'll just withdraw his troops, and he's like, and I think sort of Luwin and Rodrik sort of leap on it, like, you're not going to do that, right? But he was already, no, I wasn't going to do that. I was just bringing it to your attention.
Right.
Because, hey, at some point there's going to be a prisoner exchange. I'd like you to remember that I have a son down there.
Yes. And I was thinking about that. I think he should be safe, him being Willis, as long as Robb has Jaime. I don't think the Lannisters would go too far with any kind of, hurting or killing any Northmen as long as Robb has Jaime on his side.
I think that's true of Tywin Lannister. I would not let Joffrey take him.
Oh, yes, I agree. We learned Joffrey doesn't think things through like that, that's for sure.
That cause and effect thing.
Yes.
Got a lost on him.
But yeah, back to Wyman Mandela. He definitely seems loyal. He seems to be doing the right things. He's dedicated to this new kingdom. He's fired customs officers that were holding back coin for King's Landing versus giving it over to Robb in the north. He's proposing that a mint be made.
I like the idea that he caught the customs officers with bags full of gold and then said, "Oh, we were going to give them to King's Landing."
That's what we were doing. Yeah. Fire us. We'll accept that. But then,
demote us right down to the lowest. We'll start from the bottom rung again. For sure.
Right. Yeah, but he also proposes that a new mint, because they're their own sovereign nation now. They're going to need coins in Robb's image, I guess. And he says, "Hey, I know the best place to do it, right here in White Harbor." And then, being that they're also, first of all, the only city in the north and a coastal town, he suggests that he be in charge of building them a navy. And he's also mentions that he's been, at his own expense, been strengthening the defenses of White Harbor. So, he's doing a lot of stuff.
And does he say, remind me because I've forgotten, does he say specifically the harbour of White Harbor, or was it the whole city?
Yeah.
I when I read it, I in my head it was the harbour itself. So he was getting the harbour more defended, because I guess not having a navy, they are susceptible to naval attack.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a good point. Probably was the harbor, because that would be the place they would land. They'd have to come through the harbor to get to the city, likely. Yeah.
And the reason, we have touched on the reason why the North doesn't have a navy before. Bran the Burner, son of Bran the Shipwright, burnt all of the ships when his father never came home, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, there's a little bit of a... So, Wyman Manderly says that it's been hundreds of years since Bran the Burner burnt all the navy. But in the other book, Fire and Blood, which is kind of the Targaryen history, it's mentioned it's been thousands of years before the conquest that this happened. So hundreds of years do add up to thousands of years. He didn't say how many hundreds of years, but I noticed that there was a little bit of a discrepancy there. Yeah.
Maybe that's as high as numbers go for Mandela. Right. If I were Rodrik and Luwin, I'd take advantage of that. It'll be like, yeah, we'll give you hundreds of golden dragons for that.
Yeah.
If you build us hundreds of ships, you can have hundreds of gold dragons.
Bran Shipwright, he sailed west across the Sunset Sea and never came back, and that's why Bran the Burner, in his grief, torched all the ships in the fleet, and they apparently just have never bothered to rebuild since then.
Yeah, so Manderly asks for enough gold to build a fleet that within a year would have sufficient galleys to take Dragonstone and King's Landing both. It seems a little bit far-fetched.
Yeah, it seems like to me like the epitome of hyperbole, if you will. Brian Regan's fans will get that.
The real problem for me is not that, if you dedicated the whole city to shipbuilding, sure, you could build an amazing fleet within a year, but who would know how to sail these things? If the North has been without ships for hundreds of years,
right? None
of these people are actually expert sailors.
That's a very good point. Should put that down in pedantry.
Well, no, this is Wyman Mandely's point. He's not wrong necessarily. He's just really swinging for the fence.
I'll give you the ships.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to sit idle for a while till we can train some folks to sail them.
They all just ship up at King's Landing and they all just get out puking. And, oh, no. Take me to the dungeons.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, one thing I'll say here is Ned definitely didn't surround himself with flatterers and fools. Luwin and Rodrik are stalwart and sharp and they're super reliable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe why Ned was so ill prepared for life in King's Landing. He's used to good, honest, loyal counsel and was totally, a fish out of water when it came to the type of folks that he was getting advice from the small council.
Jory Cassel was probably the closest he had to that from the north.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was his captain of the guard. It was probably his most relied upon confidant, followed by Fat Tom.
Yeah. Was he a Glover?
He's like, I only need to set aside a tenth of my grain. I'm hungry, man.
Well, Fat Tom. To be fair, if you set aside a tenth, you'd be doing all right with Fat Tom.
It made me think about Rodrik and Luwin's. How much effort they're putting into providing Robb with the best counsel possible, which is something Rodrik literally voices in this chapter, is we need to give Robb our best counsel possible. It makes me think in comparison of Cersei's small council that she's put together. She wanted all yes men that were just basically going to agree with her point of view, everyone thinking the same way she's thinking, rather than putting together the best counsel possible that she could.
Yeah. But again, I mean, that is true, but she does have Littlefinger and Varys, and she knows that they're talented.
Yes. Of course,
I don't.
Varys especially is going to go with whatever way the winds are blowing that are going to keep him in the best possible position. And Littlefinger is going to say and do things that are going to put him as well in the best possible position. So neither are looking out for the Queen's or Joffrey's best interest.
True. One thing I'll say about Luwin and Rodrik is that they are quite clever in never actually uttering a decision here. They're all like, or at least they'll give decisions on minor things, but on the big things, they're like, we will send that to Robb and he'll talk about it. So,
yes,
that does. I mean, not that they're passing the buck, but they do a good job of masking the fact that they're not actually giving anyone a positive answer to anything significant.
Right. Yeah, and now just to remind anyone who's forgotten, the reason why Rodrik is doing all these things along with Luwin is because when he and Kat finally left the Vale and got to White Harbor, she rode to Moat Cailin. She made him the Castellan of Winterfell, so he is technically the one in charge here in Winterfell. So that's why he's making these kind of decisions as a knight. But yeah, you're right. They're definitely they're like, yeah, okay, we'll take your question, pass it along. Which,
on some level, anyone could do.
Right.
They do a good job of doing it. Next up in the sort of meetings is Lady Donella Hornwood herself. So her husband died at the Green Fork. Again, I kind of feel bad for anyone whose husband, son, whatever, died at the Green Fork, because it was really a suicide mission. The whole Green Fork.
Yes, right. But the way it was carried out, it didn't have to be. It could have been just keep bringing the Lannisters along, but that's not how they did it.
No, it was run full tilt into that trap and let the jaws close around us and hope for the best.
Right.
And not only did her husband die, but her son was killed by Jaime himself in the Whispering Woods. Yes. So that's why I'm wearing my Hornwood socks today.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Jaime, and the realm refers to him as the Kingslayer because he killed King Aerys Targaryen. But at the Whispering Wood, he was almost the heir slayer because he killed Torrhen Karstark, Eddard Karstark, and Daeron Hornwood. Now, Torrhen and Eddard aren't the heir, but if something were to have happened to Harrion, they would be the heir. So he, in one push to get to Robb, he plowed through several important members of northern families here.
Yeah, or at least he was the son killer. Basically,
yeah,
if a son of any lord came into his path, they got decapitated there and then. So the Hornwood lands are sort of geographically, they are between the Manderlys and the Boltons lands. Basically, the Manderlys are roughly south of the Hornwoods and the Boltons in between. So they sort of form a buffer between those two. The Manderlys and Boltons have more land, probably a little bit more powerful than the Hornwoods. The Hornwoods are a bit of a, the sandwich,
right,
in the middle of the sandwich. To the east of the Hornwoods land are the land of the Flint family. Their seat is Widow's Watch. That's a more minor family, unlikely to win her hand. Although it would sort of like complete the middle of the sandwich between the Manderlys and the Boltons. But the Flints don't come to Winterfell. They're the one of the families who don't show up. They're about the only family who don't show up in this chapter because they've got the sickness at Widow's Watch, and Lady Lyessa Flint is very pregnant, so the Flints don't come. But in actual fact, I don't know if there's an eligible male, but they would actually be kind of a good choice for this. West of Hornwood's lands is Winterfell, and then beyond Winterfell you've got Deepwood Motte and Torrens Square. Further west.
Yeah, Deepwood Motte is to the north, Torrens Square is to the south of Winterfell. Exactly.
The Karstarks and the Umbers are further north than all of these other families, and they have no boundary with the Hornwoods.
Yeah, but the description mentions that by the end of the chapter, all of the primary houses have been accounted for in one way or another, but some don't get a mention, like the Risewells and the Dustons, who are both southwest of Winterfell, don't get a mention, and there's another smaller house called Wolffield between the Flints and the Locks that don't get a mention. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't send a note. We just didn't hear anything at all from them. So.
That's where the editor came in.
Right. Really, there was like 8 of these conversations. 5 at max. Cutting it at 5.
All right. Let me tell you, Lyessa Flint is really pregnant and she's not coming, okay? You've got one sentence. Sum it up.
So there's so many conversations in this chapter. Basically, everybody that shows up to talk to them throws their hat in the ring one way or another to somehow come to the aid of Donella Hornwood. And
yes, who I think she's about 42 years of age, and she says that her beauty has faded. That's what she says of herself. I would assume that she's wrong. She's just being modest. I'm sure she's very beautiful.
And that's what Rodrik says. She is quite comely for all her modesty. Yes. But so there's a lot of different options thrown out there. But one I thought was pretty good option is Baron Tallhart, who's the son of the guy who showed up, who's Leopold Tallhart. Now, he's not actually Lord of Lord Tallhart. That's his brother Helman. But Leopold's wife is actually a Hornwood. She is the sister of the late Hollis Hornwood, which was Danella's late husband. So that makes Baron Danella's niece. Danella's nephew, I mean, sorry. Now, so Leopold's idea is maybe Danella doesn't want to remarry. And if she doesn't want to remarry, my son Baron could come live with her, come live with his aunt, be raised by her as an heir. He's 10. And so, he could be raised. He's even willing to allow the boy to change his name to Hornwood. And he doesn't say this, but I was thinking, the complaint about this is, but he's a kid. We're going to be in the same situation. We need someone, a strong presence there to keep anybody from trying to take these Hornwood lands. I was thinking that Robb could name a strong knight as Castellan until the boy is of age. Yeah. And what better knight than possibly Rodrik? Or, I know Rodrik is Castellan of Winterfell at the moment, but,
That's actually a beautiful solution right there.
We know that Danella tends to favor Rodrik.
And even, how about this? A little bit of matchmaking for the future. 10-year-old Baron with Rodrik's daughter, Beth.
Beth, yes.
Huh? There you go.
So
keeping it in the family.
Right. So that way, Rodrik's concerned that he might not live long enough to protect these lands. But, Baron's 10, another 5-6 years, and he'd be a man grown, especially in the north.
I'm impressed. I think they should get rid of Luwin and Rodrik, who can't come up with a good idea between them, and appoint you.
Right, I'll do it. And I'll just pass everything along to Robb.
Right.
Easy.
But Hallis Hornwood did have a bastard son, Lawrence Snow, who's being fostered by the Glovers, so probably not flourishing, at least intellectually. He could be the answer, but he is not her blood, of course. He's her husband's bastard child, so she's not going to be thrilled with that as an outcome. But we do know that kings can elevate bastards to a higher status,
right?
And Robb could do that.
Yeah, and so I was wondering when this Lawrence came about. Was it before Danella or after Danella? So he's 10. We don't know how old Darren is, but he did ride with Hallis south with Robb, and he was one of the people protecting Robb during the Whispering Wood. So you imagine he's not younger than 10. So
yes.
So chances are
I would say he'd have to be 15 to be there.
I would think so. At least 15, which means this child, Lawrence, came after they were married. So there might be a little more animosity than if he had this child in his younger years and then got married and, he'd be like a stepson to her. But no.
Plus, that's quite a betrayal of Lady Hornwood. I think she should stop her crying over Hallis's death.
Right. What's she so broken up about?
But all of this jockeying is probably for nothing, because Luwin is probably right. The most likely outcome of this marriage will be to cement an alliance with a Riverlands house.
Yes.
Probably not the Freys, because I would think that the deal that Catelyn struck with the Freys is enough to cement that alliance, because Robb's going to marry one.
Right, yeah.
But
that should do it. She'll be queen in the north. That should be enough to appease them.
But what about my 17th granddaughter? Grandson in this case.
Right, yeah.
But other Riverlands lords will definitely want their reward, and that's politically the most likely outcome of this is someone from the Riverlands, I would think.
Yeah, that certainly will make a lot of northern lords angry, though, because, this is the north.
Yeah.
And these are northern lands.
It definitely could be combined with the Tallhart's idea, because if she is honestly saying that she's past childbearing age, then there would need to be an heir.
Right, yes.
Unless this Riverland's second son comes with a child already, there won't be an heir for the Hornwood lands. So Baron Tallhart as a nephew could be the right answer for that still.
Yeah, even if he does come with a son, that son is not of northern blood. They take stuff very seriously like that in the north.
Right.
So.
And that actually might lead to the choice, because they may not choose someone who's got a child for that reason.
Oh yeah.
So then if a child happens, then it will be Lady Hornwood's child.
Right.
And if a child doesn't happen, we'll just reassign those lands when the time comes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rodrik talks about the fact that when he dies, if he married Lady Hornwood and then died, Beth would be the kind of the heir as his child, but not really, because she was not born to it.
Right.
She would just be marrying into it. And so she'd be in peril, because the rivals would see her as a rival claimant to the lands that they could claim. For instance, the Tallharts claiming it through the nephew Baron.
Yeah. I feel like maybe he's being a little bit overly protective of his daughter Beth here, because a Wiki of Ice and Fire projects Rodrik to be at least 51. Let's say he's even 60. And Beth, he could, at 60, he very possibly could go at least another 10 years. He seems like a pretty healthy guy. You never know. Like he says to Bran, you never know the when you're talking about tomorrow. But let's say he goes another 10 years. Beth would be 20 by then. Plenty of time to have married someone who's a strong
Baron Tallhart.
Right. Yes, exactly. And it seems like it would be a great opportunity for House Cassel and for Rodrik to become a landed knight and Beth to become a lady. Could really, up them in the eyes of the North.
Yeah.
And based on what we know of Rodrik's reputation, Robb might really appreciate a strong, loyal person like Rodrik being the head of a house that borders Bolton lands, because, Boltons also have a reputation that are a little bit sneaky and crafty.
So there's a lot of cutthroat talk about gobbling up these Hornwood lands. It's a mild concern that the Stark in Winterfell is only 8 years old, if this bubbles into something more than just jockeying for position. But I have to say, that you've got to imagine all of these people who are coming and pitching for Lady Hornwood must realise that they're just going through the motions. It's going to go wherever it goes. Now, if you've come and pitched and get told no at some point in the future, maybe you can get something in return.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what are you going to give me instead then?
Right.
Can I have the royal mint? So that's the thing, you see. I don't think any of them are very serious. I think they would all like it. I just don't think that that's serious because they know Robb's not there to make the decision.
Yeah. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
They understand that it's going to go through Robb, and they understand that Robb's going to make a more geopolitical decision than just it would be nice for us to get our family our foot in that door,
Yes. I see where you're coming from. I had not thought about that. Yeah, I guess it doesn't hurt. Like, hey, I've got a really good idea of why I should be the person.
Right, absolutely. If you're coming all this way to pitch it, have a reason.
Right.
At least, and the better the reason, the bigger the concession you should get when you're told no.
Yeah, good point.
If you can make a compelling case but still get told no, then you can say, well, my other hand is open.
If that one's not going to work, what are you going to do about this hand?
Exactly.
Well, I will say that riding off into battle with your son does seem quite exciting and a very father-son team-building exercise there, a very bonding experience, but especially when the liege lord is a 15-year-old, he's a kid, you're bringing your son, it's a very, bonding experience here, but this is why you at least leave one at home, because, at least Harry Karstark has been taken captive and not killed like his brothers, but so many have lost their heirs at this point. Well, I guess just the Hornwoods, but the Karstarks are very lucky that Harry Karstark was not killed and just taken captive here.
Yeah.
But you would think they would learn. The Starks know that there always must be a Stark in Winterfell.
Exactly. And they left one.
Right. Benjen got stuck at home.
And Rickon.
Right. Poor Benjen got stuck at home during Robert's Rebellion. Now, this was an easy call. Bran's 8. They're not going to send him off to war with his brother. But, he is nearly a man grown, so... But...
That's your favourite. My favourite line is a Rickon joke, and your favourite line is 8-year-old to a man grown.
So anyway, I just think it would probably been wiser for everyone to leave at least one son at home so they didn't end up in this situation.
Yeah. So Roose Bolton's smarter than that because he leaves,
he was
not an heir.
Yes, right.
But because he doesn't have an heir, but he has the bastard son, who we don't know his name yet, do we? It's not been announced.
No.
I actually do. I do know.
Oh, good job. All right.
Yeah, check me out. But it's not been announced in the book, so we'll keep it a secret for now. But he's a Snow, presumably.
Oh yes, yes, bastard, he would be a Snow, absolutely.
So young Master Snow here did get left at home, but he sounds like he might be a bit of a cad.
Yeah, they might have been better off finding new ownership for the Bolton lands as well if something were to happen to Roose.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if Roose sort of legitimizes him before his death. Can Robb unlegitimize him? No, I've changed my mind. You are not a Bolton.
He probably could. King can pretty much do whatever they want. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's gathering up troops. He's showing a lot of disrespect for Lady Hornwood. And he has rumored that he has a servant called Reek, and the two of them hunt for more than just deer in the woods, which sounds like it might be hunting humans, which is not a very nice
That's
thing.
What I got from that as well, that she was implying that.
Yeah. Yes, and Lady Hornwood is clearly troubled by having this child. We don't know exactly how old he is, but he's not a man grown, I don't think. I think he's a youngster. I think he might be the Northern Joffrey, is what I'm thinking.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Comes across that way.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any adult supervision. Roose is away, and Roose doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a living wife, so there is no adult there. So Roose Bolton, we remember from what, basically from his interactions with Robb, he is hard-edged and a bit of a brute, and it seems like young Master Snow here might not have fallen too far from that tree.
Yeah. Some of the terms we've heard about Roose are terms like cold and cunning and calculating, and I would think if Roose were if this Bolton kid is a mini-me to Roose, he might be a little more subtle than amassing men in broad daylight and sending rude rejections to his neighbors when they're asking about it. He might be a little more manipulative and a little more secretive about how he does things. But this kid's young.
I'm not sure how subtle the Boltons are, though. I mean, their sigil is a flame.
They do send a message with that. Yes. There's no subtleties there.
So the Tallhart delegation complains of unruly behaviour. Their heir, Benfred, has raised lancers and they're causing mischief in the countryside. And they've got called a bunch of wild hares, and so they took a wild hare as their sigil, this group of lancers. Rodrik tells them what I don't think needs to be told, which is they should be brought to heel. And
right.
The threat is that the king is going to be told of this and he will not be pleased when he gets back. But this is kind of the underlying problem in the north now. The men are away and the boys are growing up unruly.
Yeah.
The Bolton bastard, the Tallharts. I can't think of anyone else who's growing up wild.
Who could it be? Shaggy Dog.
It's Shaggy Dog. Yes.
Shaggy's growing up wild. Yes, Rickon is certainly being raised by the wolves here.
Yeah. And the Freys, to be honest, they're out of control up there as well.
Right, yeah. Good point. I doubt they'd be behaving the way they are if Lord Eddard Stark was the Lord in Winterfell at the moment.
They would be foolish to, that's for sure. So Shaggy seems to be getting a bit more, maybe a little bit more sinister. I mean, he's been rambunctious and out of control, but now he's sort of skulking off when humans come into the Godswood.
Yes.
I just feel like I would now be quite afraid of Shaggy Dog, I think.
Yes, I agree. And
but also he's becoming withdrawn, and I wonder if that's kind of like the spirit animal of Rickon. That Rickon is becoming perhaps more withdrawn as well.
Could be. We didn't hear from him at all at this chapter. He wasn't in the yard. He wasn't in the Godswood. Yeah.
Forgotten, probably.
Yeah. Speaking of Shaggy Dog being less around humans and a little more wild, Asha, Bran mentions that Asha is wary of the direwolves. Because her first introduction to the direwolves was Summer and Shaggy Dog tearing people to bits, so that'll scar you for a bit. but then in this chapter, she's in the Godswood alone with the wolves when Bran and Hodor come in, so she can't be that wary of them. She's not only was she in the Godswood, she stripped naked and got into the water. So,
but maybe what happened was she wasn't naked. The wolves ripped her clothes off. She leapt into the water to avoid them.
That's the part she's glossing over because she's trying to keep
up
that tough exterior.
She pretended it was bath day.
That could have been it. Yep.
But I mean, the thing is, you talking about her warming to them. I mean, you're right. It would be hard to warm to them after that introduction. But on the flip side, the only way is up.
Right.
You're it's unlikely you're going to see the dogs do anything worse than what you saw them doing right the day you met them.
Yes, and if you do, you won't remember it for very long anyway, because you'll likely be dead.
That's right. So, Osha knows that Bran's continuing to have the dreams. She sort of laughs at his ability his inability to lie to her. He tries to, but she's like, yeah, I see you're still having those dreams.
Yeah.
Why does Bran dislike them so much? The wolf dreams.
That is the question. I mean, he's mentioned in previous chapters that he likes them better than the tree dreams, where the werewoods call to him, which, would definitely be creepy. And he mentions in that same chapter, when he talks about how he likes them better than the tree dreams, that he'd rather be a wolf than a little boy because he could go rescue his family. And you would think that he would like the freedom of being the wolf, able to prowl. But I wondered if maybe his issues are the feelings he has as Summer. Maybe he can feel the angst and captive frustration that Summer feels when he is being summer.
Or is he just secretive of the dreams? He feels like they're his own, and Osha's prying into his sort of private world of these dreams.
Right, that could be, yeah.
So the Umbers are there. They're very bawdy, but they have interesting news about Wildling Raids by sea. You would have thought that vulnerability of going around the wall had been noticed previously, and they would have had these long ships that now talking about building.
Yes, I agree. I wonder if
thousands of years that wall has been there.
Yeah.
Someone will have noticed the edge of it eventually.
You'd think the folks at Eastwatch especially would have noticed. Oh, the wall ends right about there.
Plus, I wonder how often that the sea freezes there, and they can actually walk around the edge of the wall.
Oh, yeah, in the winter, you'd think possibly.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I was wondering if maybe this is an increased exodus south due to, we've been hearing about these rumblings in the north and plenty of turmoil going on up there. And remember, Mormont told Tyrion way back in, it was like Tyrion 3 or something, that fisher folk near Eastwatch had seen White Walkers on the shore in that area. So, we know that Osha and her group escaped south of the wall. So maybe this has just been, maybe it's always been an issue. It's just increased to the point where it's becoming troublesome now.
Right. But you would think that there would always be danger of this, and so you would have some ships patrolling. Not many.
Right.
Just a couple. I mean, because it's literally just one point in the world. It's just that point there. You don't have to patrol tens of miles. It's just a couple of miles you have to keep your eye on.
Right. Good point, yeah.
And if one of those White Walkers gets around that wall, then that's a turn.
Yes, they better hope, though, the sea doesn't freeze there.
Yeah.
I found it funny that, so we get the story about how Moore's Umber gets the nickname Crow's Food because a crow mistook him for dead and took pecked one of his eyes out of his head. And Bran tells us this, and Bran he gets this story from Old Nan, and he says that Old Nan refused to tell him why the other brother, or the other uncle anyway, Hothor, got the name Horsebane. And I found it interesting that Old Nan chose to use unusually good judgment for her in this instance.
Yes.
She doesn't ever seem to hold anything back.
Exactly.
Except for this one thing.
So the Umbers were complaining that half their harvest has gone to seed for want of arms to swing their scythes. But you, I think, made the point to me that there is a group of men who have arms who could swing those scythes.
Indeed. And they're
Night's Watch.
They're begging for supplies and men and stuff.
Right.
Maybe if you sent some folks to the Umbers, who, Last Hearth is about the closest you could possibly get to the wall. They wouldn't even have to go that far. Help them out in the fields a bit, and, in exchange, we'll give you some of the things you're asking for free.
Yeah. So the mention of Jaime Lannister's name by Clay Cerwyn sets Bran's mind racing, and the chapter ends with a dream. It feels like he's very close now to be able to point the finger at Jaime Lannister as his assassin, or at least the first of his two assassins. But given that the Starks are already at war with the Lannisters, I'm not sure what impact this would have in particular. I mean, the Starks already suspect it was the Lannisters that were involved.
Yes.
I mean, if he sent a hurried raven to his mother, she'd be like, "Yes, dear, I know."
I've picked up on that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's portentous for him, of course. I mean, he doesn't know, and he's beginning to remember. So for him, it's something, but for the wider world, it probably isn't that important anymore.
Yeah, and one of his early dreams, he was climbing a tower, and the raven crow was flying alongside him, and I think he saw a golden man, and the crow said, "Put that out of your mind. You don't need that right now." So
that's right. Yeah.
He's had times before where he was starting to remember, but also the crow seems to be on a mission, because in multiple dreams the crow has been attacking his face and pecking at his forehead, and he's always woken up. But this time the crow blinds both of his eyes and then pecks a third eye into his forehead, and now he can see again. And you just wonder if that is that going to develop into something.
I wonder if after this dream he went to Moore's Umber and said, "Dude, feel you. You and me.
I feel your pain."
Yeah. You got some background for us?
Yeah, let's do a little quick background on House Hornwood. Now, we mentioned way back in Brand 6 of A Game of Thrones, that's the one when all the bannermen were ascending on Winterfell. We discussed that House Hornwood sigil. Yes, Simon is showing the House Hornwood sock. It is a brown bull moose with black antlers on an orange background. Now, their words are righteous in wrath. So, okay. And as you've probably picked up on by all the swiping right on Lady Hornwood's Tinder profile, they're one of the primary bannermen to the Starks. But here's a few interesting tidbits about the house. So, like many of the Northerners, Lord Hornwood sided with Rhaenyra Targaryen and the Blacks in the Dance of the Dragons. And in fact, in late 130 AC, the then Lord Hornwood was among those in Cregan Stark's army of Northmen that marched on King's Landing. But once in the capital, his younger son disappeared in Flea Bottom during something that was known as the Hour of the Wolf, which the Hour of the Wolf it was a time frame at the end of the Dance of the Dragons when Cregan Stark governed in King's Landing for a bit. Now, after the Dance of the Dragons, a Hollis Hornwood, known as Mad How, now this Hollis is spelled differently than our most recent late Lord Hornwood, who is Hallis Hornwood. He and another man named Timothy Snow formed a free company of Northmen known as the Wolf Pack. Now, a free company is basically an organized group of sellswords. Now, this Wolf Pack then left Westeros to set up business in Essos.
I'll just mention that a Hedge Wizard is a local or travelling herb doctor found in Westeros. The wizard would likely use traditional healing spells, charms to heal the sick or help those in need. The hedge part comes from that they are quite likely to be poor and sleep outdoors at times, like hedge knights. Chances are they're more trusted by small folk since they're likely affordable and accessible. Nobles probably don't use their services very often, and if they do it quietly, unlike the Glovers. So comparison with the television show, most of this is confined to a scene in the hall at Winterfell in which various northern lords and lords' sons petition for things, this and that. Bran looks a bit sullen. Luwin has to remind him of his place and role. Rodrik is not there. It's just Luwin and Bran. There are no Frey boys. There's no Quintain jousting. No Lady Hornwood, no discussion of her whatsoever. No Osha bathing. Instead, we get the sight of Hodor bathing in all his glory.
Oh, what a trade-off.
Yes. One thing I wanted to mention, and this is sort of like, next up is pedantry, but this actually, I think, is actually really in the comparison with the television show. Bran dresses in sort of white wool for these meetings, kind of like his best clothes kind of thing. And I think several times in the books, I felt that the Starks dress up more than they do in the TV show. In the TV show, they are homespun and leathers, and they barely distinguishable from the Night's Watch what they wear. but in the book, they actually are quite fine in what they wear.
Yeah,
yeah. Or maybe this just happened because they're now kings in the north again. Maybe the tailors of Winterfell who've been stitching these ferret skins for centuries,
right?
For 300 years. Finally, they've been able to break out the finery, and so yeah, just a comment.
Yeah, that's a very interesting distinction there between the two.
Yeah. Pedantry. So I would just say that does every Northern Lord need to be reminded of how much of their harvest to be set aside for the winter? Every winter? I've heard the phrase "the North remembers," but apparently it doesn't.
It doesn't remember
fails
that.
to remember.
That is
Luwin must be like, "What the hell is wrong with you people? Set aside food.
We just
it's be the
did this 10
winter.
years ago."
Exactly. It's not even that long ago. You remember how hungry we were before the spring came?
Yeah. I like it. Definitely like it.
News and notes.
Well, news and notes. So I came across this cool YouTube video from a YouTube channel called Scrivia TV that it goes through each northern house and shows the lands. It's got a really cool it breaks each land into different colors and talks about each house's lands into different colors and talks of details about each house and shows some of their histories and stuff. It's really cool. It's called Map of the Known Houses of the North, Their History, and a Tour Through Winterfell. So if you go to Scrivia TV's YouTube channel and check that out, I found it interesting anyway.
And you're telling me this now.
I know.
At
sorry.
the end of this. Could you not have shared this with me?
And I actually made another discovery that isn't in the notes here that I just made in the past couple days. So I really struggled a bit with this chapter because my audiobook ran out at the library. And so I had no way of audiobooking it, and so I was only left to how many times I could actually physically read it, which I normally audiobook it while I'm walking or cutting grass or doing something on top of reading it. I know. So I was like, what can I do? So I did some Google searching, and I came across a YouTube channel called David Reads A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's literally this guy, David. He reads every chapter. And so I was listening to, I was audiobooking it through this David.
Are you a little bit concerned telling our readers, our listeners this, that they might go off and listen to that instead? Why should I listen to these two talking about the chapter when I can hear the chapter?
There's no witty...
In less time!
There's no witty commentary. That's what I'm basing, what I'm banking it on here.
Let's hope you're right.
Now, I will say, he is not Roy Dotrice. He does do voices. I kind of wish he wouldn't. The voices can be a bit distracting. His Luwin voice was really hard to take. But I do appreciate his effort. He definitely put in a lot of effort. So there you go. Right. David Reads A Song of Ice and Fire. ASOIAF. Like David Reads ASOIAF is the YouTube channel. Oh, and finally here...
Yeah, I was going to say, I would read this for you, but it's all gibberish.
Well, because I was kind of also informing you of this. You and I have a mutual friend. His name is Jacob Burnett, and his new book is out. It's called The Dream and the Muse, and it's his second fantasy fiction novel. His first was called Chaos Court, and his book, The Dream and the Muse, is currently ranked 4th on Amazon's hot new releases.
Oh, wow.
Yes, good for Jake. So, anyway, awesome. Just thought I would mention that since Jake is a friend of ours.
Amazing. Oh, so we got a review, right?
Yes.
We got, on Apple Podcasts, Mom in High Heels, whose very name makes me feel a little hot under the collar. She says, lots of fun. I recently discovered this podcast and I'm so glad I did. Finding a podcast about the Game of Thrones books is really difficult as most deal mainly with the show. So I was excited to stumble across this one. The guys have great voices and after a few podcasts figured out how to modulate their sound, which I greatly appreciated. Their banter is fun and witty and they always make me smile. Pedantry Corner is my favourite. Yeah, mine too. Because I'm all about pedantry. Details are important. Thanks for a great podcast, guys. Wow, thank you, Mum in High Heels. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a great review. Very much appreciated.
All right, let's put a line under this one. Okay. Let's draw some conclusions. So, Bran doesn't love, but he's doing pretty well being the Stark in Winterfell.
Yeah. His job's not too hard, as long as he can deal with the tedium of it all.
yeah, without looking too bored.
Yeah.
Let Luwin and Rodrik do the talking.
Yes,
seems to be the right
basically.
thing to do. And Luwin and Rodrik are doing the right thing. Bang the drum to get people preparing for a hard winter and deferring the more complex issues to Robb.
Yeah, they've all basically become soft boys of summer, apparently.
Really?
They don't know how to save any grain.
This hard harvest that they're going to have to do without any help.
Right, yes.
Help toughen them up for the winter.
Yes, as the Umbers mentioned, they don't have enough arms to harvest everything they've got.
Flip side of that is, given that all the people are away off fighting the war, it should be easy to set aside more of your harvest because there's no one there to eat it.
Solid point, yes. That's what Rodrik should have mentioned. Why are you only putting aside a 10th? You've right. What are you doing with all the excess?
Your population is down 30% and you're setting aside a 10th? Come on.
Yeah. Lady Hornwood seems to be the current prize in the north at the moment. she's 40th, but by her own admission, she believes she's no longer beautiful. Rodrik disagrees. But I think all the Northern Lords are looking past any kind of lack of beauty issues and keeping their eyes on the prize, which is the lands and the wealth that come along with marrying her.
Every time we say Lady Hornwood in the sense of a prize here, I want to say lands.
Right.
that's the only thing they all care about.
Yes, really. Yeah. But I wonder, could this escalate into an issue here? Rodrik assured Lady Hornwood that she will be safe from invasion. She's concerned specifically about Roose Bolton's son, and there's plenty of other hungry stares looking at her and her lands. But well, can he defend her against an attack if it comes on suddenly?
Yeah. We all have a soft spot for Rodrik ever since his seasickness. Might be nice for him if he could get together with Lady Hornwood.
Yes.
But this is the book we're reading, so happy endings are not on everyone's cards.
No.
Why should he be different?
That's right. But I think I've painted a fairly good story here that could work out with Rodrik and Baron and Beth and Lady Hornwood.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So Bran is now right on the cusp of knowing who shoved him out of the window. But what will this knowledge give him? It isn't really going to change the geopolitics very much.
Right.
It might change Bran.
Yes.
He's going to know who pushed him. He's going to remember it. It's going to be a bad dream forevermore.
Yeah.
Could make him bitter, lust for revenge against the Lannisters.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's going to know it wasn't a fall. It was an intentional act.
Which I think will cheer him up a little bit, because it'll be like, well, good. I knew I couldn't fall.
Right.
Told you I would never fall.
That's the silver lining he's going to cling to, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now he's got a third eye in his dream. I don't know. I mean, it seems all symbolic anyway, but will that change anything? Before, it seemed like the Raven was really working hard to try and create that third eye. Now it's finally accomplished it.
Yep.
And with so many lords and their sons in the Riverlands, maybe the North will become quite a matriarchal society.
Possibly. Maybe that's what Lady Hornwood should do. She should just go out and find someone who can sort of, get her into the family way and make that bastard the heir to the Hornwood
right,
lands.
Hey. They're her lands now.
Better her own heir than her faithless husband.
Right.
All right. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
And if you wouldn't mind and going out and leaving us a 5-star rate or a really nice review, we certainly would appreciate that, and we might read it in a future episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.